Okay, so chapter 9, historical and cultural considerations. Pain has a really long history, and it's interesting to think about the history here. Linguistically, pain, one of the Latin words that links to pain is poena, dolkos or poena. Poena, punishment, to be punished. Think about how many times you see patients who say, it's not fair. Why did my back pain not go away? It's really not very fair. If we think about this model here, this is Descartes' Cartesian model, a French genius, mathematician, philosopher who in the 16th century came up with a very, very simplified view of pain. For Descartes, pain came as a result of your toes touching these flames. It didn't have anything to do with the brain. Descartes was the godfather of dualism, the mind-body divide. And still today, in the Western world, this is how we think about pain. Pain comes from a very simple source. In this instance, it's the man with his foot in the fire. It has nothing to do with how you think and how you feel. In today's world, we see lots of problems with this. This is people who come in with an MRI scan that looks dreadful, but they're okay. Or sometimes they come in with an MRI scan that looks great and they end up with surgery and facet joint injections. This also causes other problems. We can think about this with regards to injuries that we see with patients. If my patient has an injury that was caused by rugby at the weekend, then it's legitimate. It's socially okay. It's fine to have a back injury that's caused by rugby. It's not okay if you have an injury that's related to maybe a bereavement. If you have back pain that's causing you problems, but there was no physical harm, it seems to be an emotional upheaval, then people get stigmatized. In 2019 still, we have physical health, mental health. This is a problem. So this next slide shows the difference between the 16th century view of pain from René Descartes and the 21st century view of pain, which is far more complex. We've got to consider genetics, neurochemistry, all of these different, very complex things. It's not simple. I show this image to patients, and some patients will say to me, but surely the original version, the 16th century version, is correct. And you say, well, why? You assess their thinking. And they say, well, surely if he just takes his foot out of the fire, if he removes his foot from the fire, things will get much better. But it doesn't work this way, because think about what happens if you stop bending. If you have back pain and your wife starts putting your shoes and socks on, there's a big problem here, because you start to now get stiffer, weaker, tighter. Your body becomes more sensitive. This is a big problem. Again, some patients say, well, surely just put the fire out. Get the fire engines in, get the pompiers to come to town. Look at this. This is a problem. We saw these figures earlier on. The more things we throw at people with back pain, the worse the problem becomes. This is a huge issue. And also, one thing that people sometimes think is just remove the part that hurts. I'm sure, like me, you often see patients who say, well, if you just remove the disc from my back, it will get better. Or alternatively, I see some patients who choose to have a limb amputated because it's too painful. And of course, they still have pain. They have phantom limb pain. Removing the part that hurts doesn't take away the problem either. This is a problem. So let's think about this. If René Descartes was here now, he'd be very confused by this image. This man is being stood on whilst he's lying on a bed of 9-inch nails. Look at his face. Look at the mouth. He looks quite comfortable. René Descartes would be going, what? This makes absolutely no sense. What about walking over hot coals as an experience of pain? I wonder if any of you have ever done this. I did this many years ago when I was a young man backpacking. The thought of the experience was terrifying. The reality was liberating. It's actually fun. It wasn't painful. I could feel the heat, but it wasn't at all painful. And it made me question my training as a physiotherapist. Why did my feet not hurt? Why am I feeling so happy and elated? This is strange. Very odd. But what about this image? I often use this image in two situations. First of all, when I show this image to patients, I see some patients who they have lots of pain everywhere. They have maybe fibromyalgia. They're struggling with simple things, but yet they have a big bolt of metal through their tongue, or they have tattoos. And you ask them, did it hurt to have the tattoo or the tongue stud of metal? And they say, oh no, it wasn't too bad, it was fine. What's the difference? They want this. I wanted the tattoo. I didn't want fibromyalgia at the age of 24. So again, it's about choice and a perception of threat. I use this image with people as well to talk about the importance of culture. Pain and culture are really fascinating. So we'll look at a story from France, from a course that I taught here in Paris a while ago. Sometimes we need to refer to pain stories. Some stories can be really very interesting. The media often has really interesting, weird pain stories, and I think it's important to show patients. This story is a man called Mr. Xiao. Mr. Xiao is walking down the road one day, minding his own business, when somebody 16 stories up in a tower block is tending to his roof garden, some herbs with a very large knife. And sadly for Mr. Xiao, this man drops his knife. As he drops the knife, it lands straight into Mr. Xiao's head. Ouch. Look at that image. Not very pleasant. That's a life-threatening situation. But look at the words in this study, in this article. It was only when the local tobacconist stared at him slack-jawed and pointed to the top of his skull and said, "You've got a huge knife in your head," that Mr. Xiao said, "Oh my God, big knife in my head," dropped to the floor, huge amounts of pain. What does this tell us about pain? Pain is really weird, and I think it's really important to tell patients that pain is quite strange sometimes. It's not as simple as we'd like to think. What does it also tell us about pain? Pain is a conscious experience. This man felt a raindrop. He thought it was a raindrop. It wasn't. It was a huge knife. So pain is a conscious, complex experience. Nociception, warning data, the feeling of the raindrop or the knife on his head was not enough. It wasn't sufficient to give him a pain experience. All it was just data, like the sound waves coming into the ear. So there is a problem when we think about pain coming as an input from the surrounding world. It's the wrong way round. Just like we saw with the sprained ankle, we're thinking about it the wrong way. The brain is the part that processes the pain and produces the pain, and it involves the body, of course. It involves the bio. You cannot throw the bio away, like we've already said, but it's not the root cause. It's not where it's coming from, and it just working on the bio is not going to solve the problem. So I want you to think about this weird pain story, because this is what I get to do with patients. Can you think of any weird pain experiences from your life, or from maybe the stories your patients have told you? Can you recall any recent experiences where you've encountered cultural differences between you and between your patients? What happened? Why did this happen? And what might you do differently next time, being aware of some cultural differences with pain? I think it's important, again, to reflect on these things.